Chinese New Year, the year of the ox, and welcome to the 5 New Year's Wellness Challenge with your host, Dr. Sarah D. Alemi. We are celebrating the Chinese New Year with the 5 elements of acupuncture: metal, water, wood, fire, and earth. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Dr. Sarah D. Alemi.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Sarah Alemi, and welcome. Tonight is night 2 of our 5-day wellness challenge. But before we dive into tonight's discussion on the water element for 5-element acupuncture theory, I wanted to do a quick recap of yesterday evening. For those of you who are with us, yesterday we discussed the metal element, the first of our 5 elements that we're going to cover this week. We had on one of my colleagues, Dr. Kachina Smith, who talked about what the year of the metal ox has in store for us, according to Chinese astrology. According to her, it looks like it's going to be a bit better than last year's year of the metal rat. However, it looks like we still need to keep our heads down and plowing ahead. Dr. Smith also talked a little bit about what the metal element presents like in a person. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to her. You can contact her at CHI at acudrchi.com. Again, that was for Dr. Kachina Smith. Well, then we went into the metal element and talked about how it shows up in our health, whether physical, mental, or emotional. We discussed how the lungs and the large intestine correspond or are regulated by the element according to Chinese medicine. So any issues arising from those organs, whether they're respiratory, they're digestive, or even the skin, can relate to and be treated by treating the metal element. So some ways to treat those conditions that could show up are the use of acupuncture or acupressure, dietary therapy, cupping, or gua sha on the upper back and neck. Breathing exercises. Again, if you've got any kind of respiratory issues like chronic respiratory infections, asthma, you suffer from shortness of breath, you've got skin issues like dry skin, flaky skin, even eczema or psoriasis, or digestive issues like constipation, definitely make sure to check out our video from last night about the metal element and some ways you can treat it with a clinician like myself or at home. So back to this evening. Tonight, we're going to discuss the water element. Please be reminded, though, that while Chinese astrology uses your birth year to qualify your element, 5-element acupuncture has a system of using diagnostic tools and observations to diagnose your element. And this week is really more about how the elements show up out of balance, therefore how you can treat them versus kind of figuring out what your constitutional factor or element is. Again, while both Chinese zodiac and 5-element acupuncture are based on 5-element theory, acupuncture theory is more about what shows up in person versus your birth date, if that makes a little bit of sense. So again, tonight we're going to discuss the water element. However, I'm first going to start off with the role that herbal teas play during the Chinese New Year. So as I reminded you yesterday, the Chinese New Year is a 15-day celebration. So today we're still in full swing as well. And one of those traditions involves the use of herbal teas. So herbal teas during the Chinese New Year. When we think of the Chinese New Year, a lot of us often think about people giving out these red envelopes, right? Or these red packets, right? Or the indulgence in festive snacks and treats. What you may not know is the role that herbal teas have in Chinese New Year traditions. For example, on the first day of the traditional Chinese New Year celebration, so what would have been this past Friday, the 12th, guests are welcomed with tea and fruits and sweets to sweeten the upcoming year, right? And it's not unusual for the sweets either to be arranged in 8 units for each tray for auspicious reasons. Numbers play a huge part in 5-element theory. So in China, every region has different traditions when it comes to how teas play a role in the Chinese New Year. One of the more popular practices is to brew up a premium pure tea and serving it to the oldest member of the family, who then passes it to the next younger member and so forth. There's certain kinds of teas that are used for this ceremony, and they're usually passed around with a tray of sweets called the box of prosperity. Another example that you'll find of the use of herbal teas comes from southern China, and one of their traditions is welcoming guests who come over during the Chinese New Year with 3 cups of herbal tea. So they'll start out with a a really sweet tea, and this is meant to signify bringing sweetness into the new year. Next, they'll follow up with a balanced flavor kind of tea. So they'll do like a smoked bean tea, a blend of tea leaves, shredded carrots, orange peels, perilla seeds, and sesame seeds. This is said to wish harmony, and I know that sounds kind of gross, but this blend of herbs is actually quite traditional and very common in Chinese medical practice. Finally, the third cup, a simple cup of green tea, is offered after a meal to kind of conclude the visitation and the celebration. So just some fun facts about herbal tea. And if you ever do come visit me, please know that there are so many ways that herbal teas can be used medicinally, not just for their taste. All right, so back to the water element. So the water element has a lot of correspondences or a lot of things that it helps to control and regulate. We say that the kidneys and the bladder and the body, they belong to the water element. The color is black, the direction is north, the season winter, the climate cold, the smell is putrid, the taste is salty. The sense organs are that we say that the water elements open into the ears, the tissues that they govern are the bones, the bone marrow, the teeth, and the head on our hair, or the hair on our head, I should say. Our sounds is groaning, emotion is fear, and the energy is conserving. So the water type people, and again, this is a little play on words, so don't take it too seriously, are said to have a grayish complexion. Some of them are said to have kind of a shiny complexion. Sometimes they'll have a little bit of blackness around or under their eyes. They're said to have larger heads, smaller shoulders, and active hands and feet. They're also said to have long backs. But if you think about the kidneys, they run along the back, and that's something I'm going to talk about later. So water types, they are articulate, they're clever and introspective, they're self-contained and self-sufficient. They are penetrating, critical, and scrutinizing, seeking knowledge and understanding. They like to remain hidden. They like to remain anonymous. So the water element, these people represent the dreamers to me. Motivation to find and fulfill their purpose. And while it may look like the water types aren't doing much, there's always something going on, especially in their minds. Think of how the ocean is with its peaceful rolling motion, and it looks calm, but underneath the surface, there's always this energy going, almost a kind of frenetic like energy. This can be like the water personality, inspiring ideas, the ability to know when to take risks, but also kind of when to hold back. Of course, as I mentioned, fear is the emotion of the water. So someone who is in the grip of fear, they can only think of escape. And when they're in this mindset, their mindset is dominated with the expectation of threats. They tend to isolate themselves. They can hide from the world. They prefer to be left alone. In fact, solitude is often how the water types tend to refuel themselves. They can anticipate the worst. They can imagine calamity and disaster lurking around every corner. They tend to just be frozen in fear, so to speak, right? They tend to withdraw. In addition, the water type can be overly concerned with resources. Think of the kidneys and how our adrenal system sits above them, right, in the human body. The adrenal system being our energy source, so to speak. So in balance, the water element drives us forward. But out of balance, one either can kind of be burning themselves out. So think of someone who's an adrenaline junkie or someone who just always keeps going. So they have adrenal fatigue or burnout, or hoarding up of resources, or just, again, frozen in fear of losing everything that they have. So someone who's continually worried about having money, needing money, that sort of thing. Now, in Chinese medicine, as well as in Western medicine, we know that the kidneys store the essence and govern birth, growth, reproduction, and development. We say that the kidneys produce marrow, fill up the brain, and control the bones, govern water. We say it opens into the ears, manifests into the hair, controls the two lower orifices, houses the willpower known as the zhe, and controls the gate of life. Again, more specifically, the kidney essence governs growth, reproduction, development, and sexual maturation. It influences conception, supports pregnancy. Its decline induces menopause and determines aging. Kidney essence is a mixture of what's known as pre-essence or pre-heaven essence, so what you got from your parents, and post-heaven essence. So the air, your diet, the food and water that you're taking in. And as you know, the bladder excretes in Chinese medicine. We says the bladder removes water by qi transformation. So if these are the things that the kidney and the bladders do, then how might they show up if they're out of balance? Well, you could have low back pain or ache, as I said before. the water element, the bladder line in Chinese medicine, and runs up the back on either side of the spine. You can have hearing issues. Remember, the water element opens into the ears. Again, related to the bone and marrow. You can have osteoporosis. You can have birth defects. There can be a lack of maturation or development. You can have lack of energy, infertility. There's a tendency to fear or anxiety, tinnitus, again, with the ear. You can have premature and gray hair, low libido, knee pain. So knee and low back pain tend to be a water element issue. Scoliosis, frequent bladder infections. Again, like we talked about the hormones, so think about menopause and hot flashes or night sweats. And also it can show up as insomnia, especially those who have trouble falling asleep. Now, trouble staying asleep, that's a different element, but trouble falling asleep, insomnia, the water element. Also someone who maybe has kidney stones and, like I said earlier, adrenal fatigue, or maybe who just has a lack of motivation or will. So if any of these are something that you can relate to, or you know someone who has something like this, how do we treat it, right? Well, again, sort of like yesterday when we talked about the metal element, we can use acupuncture and acupressure. So for both acupuncture and acupressure, I would probably use the source points, in this case, kidney 3 and bladder 64. Some other points you can use, bladder 40, bladder 23. And I can't really show you these points on myself today, but I do have a picture here of some of these points and a little bit about information. So if you look up into the upper corner, it's my upper left, it might be your upper right, kidney 3, so the inside of the foot. So if you look down at your foot and you'll see you have these two round bones in the inside and outside of your ankle on the top of the foot. So the one on the inside is known as the inside or medial malleolus. So if you find that bone and then you find that your Achilles tendon is behind it, so between the Achilles tendon and the round bone on the inside of your foot is this point known as kidney 3. Kidney 3 is an amazing point whenever there's anything related to the water element or any of the signs and symptoms that we just went over. This is a point I needle. It's a great point you can press on as well. Again, it's said to tonify the kidneys yin and yang, strengthen the low back, it relieves heel or ankle pain. Some other things it can do is it can help with insomnia. It can help with blurring of vision, dizziness, headache, impotence, frequent need to urinate, tinnitus, irregular menstruation. Even if someone's just tired all the time, this is a great point. So another point that I like to use is that of bladder 23. If you go below kidney 3, bladder 23. Now this picture is showing you the back. So if you were to put your hands on your hips, where your thumbs would come together between what's known as the lumbar 2 and lumbar 3 vertebrae, this would be bladder 23. Bladder 23 is another like go-to point for anything water related. It is one of the best points for what we say tonifying or strengthening the kidneys, particularly our adrenal system. So someone who tends to have a deficiency, so low back pain, they're just really tired and they're dragging all the time, this is a really great point to use. Moving on over, you're going to see what looks like the legs, bladder 40. This is on the back of some person, right on the midline behind the kneecap, what's known as a popliteal crease. This is known as bladder 40. Bladder 40 is the Hussey point of the bladder meridian. It's a command point for the lower back, meaning anything that's going on with the lower back, this is the point to go to. This is the point to press on. It might feel a little funky. This is an amazing point for low back pain. And then finally, another point, just like yesterday, we had CV17 on the chest. Even though that wasn't on the metal element, one of the metal element meridians, I have an extra point for you today. It's not on any meridian. It's what's known as an extra point. This point is known as Amiens. I remember that it's really good for sleep because it reminds me of Ambien. I know, pretty creative on my part. So how you find it, a great way to find it is to find the I guess what you call it, you go up your jawline, right? And you go right behind it. And then you go up to your ear. And when you're under your ear, it might be a little tender. You're going to feel this bone. The bone's going to swoop down about an inch, and then it's going to come back up. Again, you go to the corner. Now I found the word. The corner of your jawline. Go onto your neck. Go all the way up to your ear. You're going to feel a little bone kind of swoop down and then swoop back up. This point might be a little tender. It's called Amiens. Again, it's an amazing point for insomnia. If any of you have visited me and you have stress or insomnia, you might notice that I've used that point on you before. All right, so we talked about acupuncture, acupressure. Just like for the metal element, I talked about doing cupping and scraping on the upper back and neck. Whenever we have a water element issue, there's a lot of times we will want to do cupping on what's known as the inner bladder line. This is the line of points or the bladder meridian that's just on either side of our spine. So all the way up to the back of our head, all the way down to our sacrum. If we do cups on this inner bladder line, it's really effective, especially on the low back, again, because there's a lot of good points on the low back that are good for the back, as well as other issues with the water element. We can also do something that's known as moxibustion on the lower abdomen and or the midline of the low back. In Chinese medicine, we say that the kidneys are the kind of like the gate of life. They're both yin and yang, and they're really related to conception. And so by doing the lower abdomen near the where our belly button is, right where we have the umbilicus cord, that's really good about kind of reviving us, about gathering what we call our chi. Some people might just say our energy. And again, by doing like the same spot, but on the back, it's really good. It helps to build, fortify, strengthen the body, and helps with a lot of water element issues, particularly if they're from a deficiency. So someone who's overdone it. So some other things we can do to treat the water element. Again, dietary recommendations. With the water element, because the color is black, incorporating black foods into the diet is thought to be helpful. So you have foods like black rice and lentils, black beans, black berries, black sesame seeds, mushrooms, dates, mulberry fruit. And even though it's not black, we say that seaweed and other sea plants and other fish from the deep ocean, right from the water, are really good at helping with the water element. Other foods to include aside from black foods include blue and purple foods, root vegetables, and seaweeds and seafood, which I already said. Avoid sugars, alcohol, caffeinated drinks, frozen and excessively raw foods when you're working with the kidney meridian. And sometimes what we'll do is we'll incorporate herbal formulas to kind of help supplement the foods that we might not easily be able to get into our diet. So some of these herbs include Romania root, also known as Chinese foxglove root. This one's really good for nourishing the yin aspect of the kidney. So if someone's has some hormonal imbalances or they're going through menopause, this is really good for that. What's also really good for the kidneys is something known as goji berries. I love formulas that have goji berries in it, particularly if someone is coming to see me for fertility issues. They're really good at what we call building the essence and fortifying the kidneys. Basically, any kind of fertility issue, guy or gal, goji berries. And then we also, cinnamon bark. We like to use dried cinnamon bark a lot. This is really good for those who are feeling weak, lethargic. They have coldness, like their hands and their limbs are always cold, like low back aches, knee aches, frequent urinations. Again, it's what we call a deficiency. These types of people are going to be really good by incorporating cinnamon into their diet. Now, some other things we can do are some lifestyle recommendations, because the nature or the energy of the watermelon is about coming inward. So think about nature in the winter. It goes inward, right? It doesn't die. It's just going inward. We want to do some more conserving types of activities. So like yin yoga or nidra yoga, right? They're very relaxing inward activities, meditation, and also, again, making sure that you take time to create a good sleep routine for yourself, something that you do regularly and consistently. All right. So again, these recommendations are about going inward, conserving, making time for yourself, and refueling. And so today we don't have a speaker, but I do have 2 case studies to go over with. So my first case study is about osteoporosis of the spine and hip of a patient. As I said earlier, the water element, which governs over the kidneys and the bladder, has a lot to do with the bones. And so if someone has osteoporosis, that is a bone issue, right? So I had a woman with a diagnosis of osteoporosis in her spine and hip. She came to me. She was only 55 years old, so this is pretty young for her. She had scoliosis as a child. So to me, this would be kind of like a gene or a hereditary issue, right? So to me, I'm already thinking about the kidneys because she already had some issues with her bone at birth. So she was given the prescription dose of calcium, and she was recommended a prescription drug for bone strength. However, she wanted to try something a little more natural first. So after a thorough health history examination with her, where it was noted again that she had scoliosis as a child, she had a history of back pain as well. We started with bi-weekly or twice-weekly acupuncture sessions for about 1 month, so about 8 treatments. And then we went to weekly treatments or once per week for 2 months. In addition to that, I had her do some, I had her switch to an herbal formula known as OsteoBalance, and I had her add strontium into her supplements as well. And as you can see here are some points that I would have done for her. I would have needled some points on either side of her spine on her back. I like to do electroacupuncture. And then after I would have needled her, I would have taken the needles out and I would have put some cups along either side of the spine as well. Again, not on the spine, but either side of the spine. So some of these points that I would have done would have been the kidney 3, which we already talked about, bladder 40, which we talked about behind the knee, bladder 23, and then I would have gone up all the way to bladder 11, which is between C7 and T1. So you could think about that as the top of our upper back and just below our neck. This is really good for bone health. This is the empirical point for the bones. So anyways, after about 3 months of treatments and changing up her supplements, she went back and her next DEXA scan showed that the bone density levels in her hips was not deteriorating. So there was no, it was not continuing to lose bone density, which is great. But the bone density in her spine actually was less. So her bones were getting denser in her spine, and her doctor gave her a new diagnosis. So she went from osteoporosis backtrack to osteopenia, which is amazing. And studies have actually shown that acupuncture can alleviate osteoporosis related pain, and it can improve bone mineral density. Again, this can be checked by a DEXA scan, both before and after treatments, which is how we knew that it did indeed work. And it's often, the acupuncture treatments, are often comparable to calcium supplementation. It often comes out more favorable for those who do the acupuncture, either with or without the calcium supplementation. Something else that comes up is that those who do Moxa, Moxa for osteoporosis, that it can be beneficial as well. And again, osteoporosis is primarily attributed to deficiency of the kidneys in Chinese medicine, since the kidneys are related to marrow production within traditional Chinese medical system. So some things that they do, I just have some notes here, some of the studies, but basically the same points that I use for my patient are the same points that are often used by other practitioners. So again, if you have any kind of bone issue or bone pain, palpating, pressure, gentle but firm pressure on these points is always really good. Some other things I was just going to say is, again, it's just I've had a few patients in which it's really helpful to see DEXA scans before and after treatment for bone loss. And it's amazing how someone's, the osteoblasts, the bone builders, right? How we can increase the number in a person just through the use of acupuncture and sometimes with herbs. All right, now going on to my second case study. So this case study has to do with a fertility patient. So I had a 37-year-old patient come to me. For the past 2 years, she had been trying to conceive, but was unsuccessful. She had gone through 1 round of in vitro fertilization at a fertility clinic. It was not successful with that. The doctors did a lot of blood work. They couldn't find anything wrong with her on paper, right? There was no reason for the infertility. So she was diagnosed as infertility unspecified. So she came to me to see what we could help with. So after I did a thorough intake with her, I decided she had kidney yin and liver blood deficiency based on her signs and symptoms. Again, acupuncture isn't just based on your birth year. In fact, it's not based on your birth year as well, but it's based on your signs and symptoms. What's known as CSOE, your color, sound, odor, emotion. And we also look at your tongue, and we take your pulses. So this patient, she had a history of anemia. She has poor energy levels, some anxiety and insomnia, not always the best sleep. She's thin-bodied. She has extreme exercise routine. She does a lot of hot yoga and Orange Theory. She has low back pain, and then her pulses were what I call weak and deep. If I were to take the pulses of her wrist right here, so the ones kind of back here were weak and deep, and she also had a pale tongue. So based on that, I had her do biweekly or twice weekly acupuncture treatments with me. In addition to doing moxibustion, I had her take a moxa stick home and do some moxibustion. And I had her do that on her lower abdomen as well as on her lower back. In addition to supporting points on her extremity and head and ears. And I also had her switch up her exercise routine to something a little bit more conserving again. So she switched to a different kind of yoga. So I worked on her for about 2 months before she decided to do another cycle at the fertility clinic. So the second round of IVF was amazing. Her follicle numbers, first of all, were doubled compared to her first round prior to the acupuncture treatment. So she was able to grow a good number of mature embryos and successfully conceive, which is amazing. So acupuncture has been found to help fertility because of its ability to do a couple of different things. All in all said, acupuncture has been known to relieve stress. We know stress is one of the main reasons that women have a hard time getting pregnant. It regulates hormonal imbalances, as I said earlier, and it increases blood flow to the uterus and the ovaries. There's some other information out there too that shows how acupuncture can help, directly impact the number of egg follicles, because of the way it's able to contribute to the blood supply to different areas of the body, depending on where we put the needles. Overall, acupuncture has become so, important when it comes to fertility that a lot of fertility clinics will actually have an acupuncturist on staff to have someone do pre and post transfer treatments, which I think is amazing. So again, I know I went over a lot of information today, sort of like we did last night. Oh, and before I forget, this just shows some of the points I used for my fertility patient. So again, like last night, we went over a lot of information, so I know that this may be a bit overwhelming. My hope is that if you have any questions, you don't hesitate to reach out to me. But kind of recapping tonight, so tonight we talked about the water element. In Chinese medicine, we say that the kidney organs and the bladder organ, it's related to the water element. So any condition, any signs and symptoms that have to do with the kidneys or the bladder, they're related to the water. So we treat the water, we treat those issues, right? So again, if you have anything related to your bones, if you have anything related to development, if you have anything related to hormones, so that's going to be more women, so gynecological, hot flashes, menopause, fertility, that sort of thing. Or if you even have anything that's related to like an anxiety or a fear, just like feeling paralyzed, treat the water element. And again, there's so many different ways we can treat it. It's just a matter of what your particular signs and symptoms are. All right. So for tonight's prize, I've got a couple of great things. I've got some tea, because we talked about herbal tea at the beginning of tonight's talk. Yes, this is cold and flu tea, but hey, it's technically still cold and flu season. But what I really like about this tea is that it's great flavored, but there's also an ingredient in it known as holy basil or tulsi, and that is an adaptogenic herb. And that's really great for calming the adrenal system. So if you're someone who works their kidneys to death, so to speak, this is really good for you. I also have a acupressure ear seed kit. This one is specific for sleep. So if you have sleep issues, this is great for you. I also have 2 herbal oil roll-ons. One is for meditation, one is for nighttime roll-on. They have different herbs in them, but both of them are really good and have been proven to basically stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest. So regardless of whether you're trying to go to sleep or whether you're just trying to find some time to get your head on straight, these herbs are fantastic. With that, again, if you do have any questions on any of these videos, just not tonight, please don't hesitate to either reach out to me or to leave a question in the comment section, whether you're on my YouTube channel or on Facebook, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But before I wrap up, I I do want to mention that this is going on all week. Today was just 2 of the 5 elements. Tomorrow we are going to be talking about the wood element. I'm really excited about that because I have one of my patients coming on to join us tomorrow. And I'm also going to have a patient to practice some cupping and gua sha for you guys. But before we send you off into the evening, I want to make sure that we see who our winner is for the night. So if we could go to the wheel, perfect. All right, let's see. All right, Colleen, so you won today's Kidney Pack. So if you have low back pain or anything going on with that, I think this would be fantastic for you. Don't worry, I'll make sure to reach out to you. Again, thank you everyone so incredibly much for joining me today as we talked about the water element in Chinese medicine. I'll try to do a little bit of a recap tomorrow night, kind of like I did today for the metal element. But thanks again. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow at 7 p.m. Again, don't forget to register if you want to be eligible for a prize. Thank you.